The castle of Eldrath rose like a silver shadow against the gray morning mist. Its towers were carved from stone older than memory, and its halls echoed with whispers of kings and queens long gone. In these corridors many sought attention, glory, or power, yet there was one figure who seemed to drift unseen. Lyra moved quietly through the marble halls, her steps soft against the polished floors. She had long ago learned the art of invisibility, not the kind that cloaks the body, but the kind that hides a presence, a voice, and a thought. She knew how to remain unnoticed, watching others scheme and shine while she faded into the shadows. To the world she was nothing. Yet in her heart she carried a quiet strength, a fire that no one had seen. It was the morning of the visiting Alpha's arrival. The northern lands were wild and untamed, and Kale, the Alpha of the Frostborn clans, had come seeking alliance. Tales of his power and his wolf companion Fenrir had reached even the far corners of Eldrath. People whispered of his sharp gaze that could see lies, his strength that could bend iron, and the wolf whose growl could chill the bravest warrior. Lyra did not pay attention to such gossip. She had learned to ignore the world, but that morning the castle felt different. A strange tension pulsed through the halls, carried by servants and guards alike. Something was coming, something that would not be ignored. Lyra, carrying a tray of tea for the court, paused as she reached the grand hall. The great doors opened, letting in a swirl of frost-laden air. Kale entered with Fenrir at his side. The Alpha's presence was immediate and impossible to miss. His eyes, sharp and dark as storm clouds, scanned the room with a quiet power that demanded attention. Courtiers bowed and whispered, and yet Lyra felt no desire to hide. She had always been invisible, but something in the Alpha's gaze made her spine tingle, as if the world had shifted. Just for a moment, then Fenrir growled. It was low at first, barely more than a rumble, yet it cut through the chatter like thunder. Heads turned, and the court held its breath. The wolf's eyes, glowing faintly silver, locked onto Lyra. Growl after growl, Fenrir moved closer, hackles raised, lips curling in a silent warning. Lyra froze. She had never seen anything like it. Wolves were not uncommon in Eldrath's forests, but this creature was no ordinary animal. Its gaze was intelligent, knowing. It was not angry at her, yet it was not welcoming either. It was claiming. Kale's eyes followed the wolf's, narrowing slightly as he stepped forward. "She's mine," he said, his voice low but carrying over the hall. It was not a question. It was a declaration, fierce and unyielding. The room fell silent. Courtiers blinked, unsure if they had heard correctly. Lyra's cheeks burned, not with embarrassment but with shock. The Alpha had not even spoken to her before, yet he claimed her, and yet a strange warmth spread through her chest. It was a feeling she had never known, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something dangerously close to longing. Kale approached, his movements controlled and precise. Fenrir remained at his side, though the growling lessened, a subtle acknowledgement that the claim had been made. Lyra's heart raced. She wanted to speak, to protest, but the words would not come. She felt seen for the first time in her life. Truly seen. "You must be Lyra," Kale said, as though her name held a secret power. "The wolf does not lie. I am," she whispered, unsure why her voice sounded so small in his presence. Kale's gaze lingered. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Curiosity, assessment, perhaps even recognition of the strength hidden beneath her quiet exterior. "Come with me," he commanded softly yet firmly. "There is danger in staying here unnoticed." Lyra hesitated. She had always been cautious, hiding in the shadows where she believed she was safe. But something in Kale's tone made her doubt that safety had ever truly existed. She nodded slowly, allowing him to lead her through the hallways she had known all her life. The familiar corridors seemed suddenly strange, shadows stretching unnaturally, as if the castle itself sensed that her world had shifted. Outside, the morning fog clung to the stone walls like a ghostly veil. Kale mounted his black steed, Fenrir padding silently beside them. Lyra had never ridden a horse before, yet she found herself settling into the saddle with a grace she did not know she possessed. The wind bit at her cheeks, carrying with it a scent of pine, frost, and something wild she could not name. Kale spoke little during the ride, but his presence was overwhelming. Every glance he cast toward her was heavy with unspoken words, every movement measured. Lyra's heart thrummed, caught between fear and fascination. She had never known a presence so commanding, and yet it did not frighten her entirely. Instead, it stirred something deep within, a desire to step out of the shadows and meet the world on her own terms. As they rode deeper into the northern forests, the landscape changed. Trees twisted into impossible shapes, their roots rising like serpents from the ground. Mist coiled around the trunks and strange sounds echoed through the woods. Lyra realized that this journey was not just a passage through territory. It was a passage into a world of magic and danger, a place where her invisibility would mean nothing, and where she might finally discover the strength she had always hidden. Fenrir moved with them, his gaze constantly on Lyra, protective and vigilant. The wolf's growl had faded, but the intensity of its watchfulness remained. It was as if the creature could sense the untapped power within her, the power she herself had yet to understand. Finally, they reached a clearing where a river ran silver under the fogged light. Kale dismounted and Lyra followed. He studied her carefully as though weighing her very soul. "The wolf senses a bond," he said. "A bond older than either of us, tied to a curse that runs through your blood. It has lain dormant. Until now." Lyra's breath caught. She had heard of curses whispered in the old stories, tales of lost kings and forsaken magic, but she had never imagined one could touch her. And yet, standing here with Kale watching her, she felt its weight, subtle but undeniable, like the first chill of winter brushing her skin. "You will not understand fully. Yet," Kale continued, his voice low, almost hesitant, "but you are no longer invisible. The wolf does not lie. And neither do I." Lyra's pulse quickened. Questions tumbled in her mind. Why her? Why now? What was this power she had never felt? She wanted answers, yet she also wanted to trust the man who had claimed her without permission, the man whose presence made the mist feel warmer, more alive. Kyle extended his hand. "Come," he said again. "You are part of something greater now, something that will test every fear you have ever known." Lyra took his hand, trembling, and allowed herself to step forward. The river's silver light danced across her face, and for the first time, she felt seen, not as a shadow, not as a ghost, but as someone who could leave a mark upon the world. The forest around them seemed to lean closer, listening. Fenrir padded silently, his eyes bright with intelligence. Lyra did not yet understand the bond between the alpha, the wolf, and herself, but she knew, with a certainty she had never known, that her life would never be the same again. As the mist closed around them, hiding the clearing from the distant castle, Lyra's heart raced with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She did not know what awaited her in the northern lands, or how the curse that now whispered her name would shape her destiny. All she knew was that she could no longer hide, and perhaps for the first time she no longer wanted to. The wolf growled softly, a warning and a promise, and Kale's eyes held her like a claim carved in fire. The journey had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The northern forests stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of shadows and silver light. Mist clung to the gnarled trees, and the air smelled of pine, frost, and wild earth. Lyra had never been so far from the comforts of Eldrath's polished halls, yet she felt a strange sense of belonging here, as if the trees themselves recognized her presence. Kale rode beside her, silent, his eyes scanning the path ahead with a predator's precision. Fenrir trotted at their side, ears twitching, tail low but tense. Lyra kept her hands lightly on the reins, trying to steady her own nerves. She had survived in the shadows of Eldrath, invisible and careful, but here, every sound, every movement felt amplified. Even the whisper of wind through the trees seemed like a warning. "You will need to learn quickly," Kale said finally, his voice cutting through the fog. "The curse that binds you is old. It does not forgive hesitation or fear." Lyra swallowed. "I don't even understand it," she admitted. "Why me? Why now?" Kyle glanced at her, his storm-dark eyes unreadable. "Because it is you who has been hiding." Invisible, overlooked, dismissed. Yet the curse recognizes strength, even if it sleeps beneath the quiet. The wolf sensed it. I sensed it, and now, so will the world. Lyra felt a shiver, not from cold, but from the weight of his words. She had always believed her life was small, contained, and insignificant. But Kale's claim, Fenrir's recognition, and the whispered power she felt within herself told her something different. Perhaps she had been waiting all her life for someone or something to see her. Hours passed in tense silence. The forest thickened, trees leaning closer together as if trying to hide them from prying eyes. Strange sounds echoed through the mist. Distant howls, the rustle of unseen creatures, and the occasional snap of a branch. Lyra's pulse quickened with both fear and fascination. She had never been in a place where danger and beauty were so intertwined. At a narrow clearing, Kyle halted. "Rest," he commanded softly. Fenrir lay down beside them, still alert, eyes glimmering like molten silver. Kale dismounted and gestured for Lyra to do the same. They settled near a small frozen stream. Lyra knelt to cup the icy water in her hands, the cold shocking her skin. Kale's presence was close, almost too close, yet she did not flinch. There was an unspoken tension between them, a push and pull that neither fully understood. "You are stronger than you realize," Kyle said, his voice quieter now, almost gentle. "The curse will not yield to fear, but it will respond to courage. To survive it, you must face yourself, and me." Lyra looked at him, trying to read the lines of his face in the dim light. There was a hardness there, forged by years of command and battle, but beneath it she sensed something fragile, almost hidden. He had claimed her, yes, but it was not mere possession. There was recognition, an acknowledgement of the fire she had kept buried. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "I've spent my life hiding." Kale's gaze softened, though the edge of authority remained. "Hiding has kept you alive, yes, but it has also made you invisible. The world is cruel, Lyra, but it also rewards those who dare. You have the chance to step into the storm, not to be destroyed, but to be made whole." Lyra's fingers brushed the snow at her feet, and for the first time, she felt a spark of determination. Perhaps she could step into the storm. Perhaps she had no choice but to try. Their respite was short-lived. From the shadows, a ripple of movement drew Kale's attention. Fenrir rose, low growl vibrating through the clearing, ears forward, teeth bared. Lyra's breath caught. A figure emerged, cloaked in black, moving silently between the trees. Kale's hand went to the hilt of his sword, and Fenrir positioned himself between them and the intruder. "You are far from home, Alpha," the stranger said, voice smooth and cold. "And yet, the wolf has led you here for a reason." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Who sent you?" The stranger smiled faintly, a shadow of malice. "You will see soon enough. But the girl," and he gestured toward Lyra, "she is the key. You cannot protect her forever." Lyra's heart hammered. She had felt danger before, but this was different. This was not a mere threat. It was something that recognized her and perhaps even feared her. She glanced at Kale, whose jaw was set, eyes dark with warning. Fenrir growled louder, and the stranger raised a hand, muttering words that seemed to twist the air around them. The frost on the ground shimmered unnaturally, and shadows coiled like living things. Lyra felt a strange pull in her chest, a power she had never known but now recognized. The curse stirred, whispering in her mind, urging her to act. "Stay behind me," Kyle ordered. "Do not let fear control you. The wolf has chosen you for a reason. Trust it, and trust yourself." Lyra nodded, gripping the hilt of a small dagger Kyle had given her earlier. She was not trained in combat, yet instinct guided her. She felt a surge of energy, a bond forming between her and Fenrir. The wolf's eyes met hers, silver and knowing, and in that gaze she saw courage reflected back. The stranger advanced, shadows writhing around him. Lyra stepped forward, and to her own astonishment, the shadows recoiled, forming a barrier between her and Kale. She felt the power rise in her chest like a tide, strong and unrelenting. She did not understand it, yet it obeyed her will, forming a protective shield that pushed the intruder back. Kale's eyes widened, but he did not intervene. "Do not be afraid," he said quietly. "You are stronger than the curse if only you allow it to flow through you." Lyra focused, willing the power to hold. The shadows twisted and snapped, hissing like serpents, yet they could not breach her control. With a final shudder, they retreated into the mist, leaving the stranger momentarily vulnerable. Kale seized the moment, disarming him with swift precision, and the figure vanished into the forest, leaving only a cold whisper behind. "The bond has begun, but the cost is yet to come." Lyra sank to her knees, trembling not from fear but from the rush of awakening power. She had felt invisible all her life, yet now she understood. She was not weak. She was waiting for the moment the world could no longer ignore her. Kale knelt beside her, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "Do you understand now?" he asked, voice steady. "The wolf claimed you for a reason. You are not invisible. You are essential. And you are not alone." Lyra looked up at him, the mist curling around them like a silver cloak. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with a strange exhilaration. She was part of something larger now, something dangerous and beautiful, and for the first time she did not wish to turn away. "You will learn," Kyle said softly, his eyes locking with hers. "The curse is not just a threat, it is a test, and you have passed the first trial." Lyra nodded, still trembling, but a spark of determination burned in her chest. She had been invisible for so long, but no longer. The forest, the wolf, and the alpha before her all recognized something that had always been there. Buried beneath silence and shadow, Fenrir nudged her gently with his muzzle, a silent acknowledgement that she was now part of this world, part of the bond that linked alpha, wolf, and human in ways she could not yet fully understand. The fog thickened, curling around them like silver fingers, and Lyra knew the journey ahead would be far more dangerous. There were shadows yet to face, secrets yet to uncover, and a power within her that demanded mastery. But for the first time she felt ready. Kale mounted his steed again, Fenrir at his side, and Lyra followed. As they rode deeper into the northern forests, the wind whispered promises of trials, tests, and truths that would change them both forever. Lyra did not know what awaited, only that she could no longer hide. She was seen, claimed, and for the first time alive. And in the shadows of the northern wilderness something watched, something ancient, patient, and waiting for the moment to test the bond between the alpha, the wolf, and the girl who had finally stepped into the light. The northern cliffs rose abruptly from the forest, jagged and unyielding as if carved by the hands of ancient gods. At their crown sat Kale's ancestral stronghold, a fortress of black stone with towers that pierced the clouds. Lightning occasionally flashed across the sky, illuminating banners that bore the alpha's sigil, a silver wolf on a field of frost. Lyra had never seen anything so magnificent or so intimidating. They approached the massive gates, and Fenrir padded silently at their side, ever watchful. Lyra dismounted carefully, her legs stiff from the long ride through the mist and cold. The wind whipped her hair around her face, and for a moment she felt both terrified and exhilarated. She had followed Kale into danger before, but nothing had prepared her for this. A fortress steeped in history, power, and secrets that could crush the unprepared. Kyle's eyes scanned the battlements, calculating, precise. "The stronghold is not merely a home," he said. "It is a test. The curse will respond to those who enter here, and the walls themselves remember the past. You must remain vigilant." Lyra nodded, her hands tightening around the small dagger Kyle had given her. She had learned to trust her instincts, and she felt the subtle tug of the curse within her chest, urging caution and focus. Yet beneath that pull, a growing warmth. The spark she had first felt in the forest reminded her that she was no longer invisible. She was a part of something powerful, and for the first time she felt a dangerous kind of hope. The gates opened with a deep groan, revealing a courtyard shrouded in mist. Statues of wolves carved from obsidian stood as silent sentinels, their eyes seeming almost alive. Servants and guards paused to watch as Kale and Lyra entered. Some whispered in awe, others in suspicion. Lyra realized quickly that she would not be ignored here, not by Kale, not by Fenrir, and certainly not by the fortress itself. Kale led her through a maze of halls, tapestries depicting battles and ancestors lining the walls. The air smelled of smoke, leather, and ancient stone. He moved with confidence, yet Lyra sensed an underlying tension in him, as if each step brought him closer to ghosts he could not yet confront. "You feel it, don't you?" he asked quietly, his voice almost lost among the echoes. Lyra nodded. "The power, the curse. It feels stronger here." Kale's jaw tightened. "It does. The stronghold amplifies everything. The strength of the bloodline, the weight of history, the tests we must face. It will challenge you, Lyra, not just your courage, but your heart." Lyra swallowed. "My heart?" Kyle's eyes softened, the storm behind them momentarily easing. "Yes. The curse binds more than flesh and magic. It binds the soul. It will force you to face fear, desire, loyalty, and the choices you never thought you could make. You are not merely a pawn. You are essential." The first days in the fortress were a delicate dance. Lyra observed Kale closely, noting the way he commanded the guards, the way he seemed to hear even the faintest sound, and the way Fenrir never left his side. Yet beneath that strength she glimpsed moments of vulnerability, his hand lingering on the hilt of his sword when memories haunted him, the way his gaze softened when he thought no one watched. Lyra realized that the Alpha, for all his power, carried a burden as heavy as the curse itself. At night, Kale invited her to the tower chambers, where a fire burned against the chill. The wind howled outside, rattling the ancient windows, and the castle seemed alive with whispers. Lyra had not known she could feel so small and so significant at the same time. "Why me?" she asked softly, finally daring to voice the question that had haunted her since Fenrir first growled. Kyle looked into the fire, as if seeking the answer within its flames. "Because you were overlooked. Because the wolf recognized strength where the world saw none. Because the curse does not bind the weak. It binds those who can rise from shadow to claim light. And because there is something about you I cannot ignore." Lyra's cheeks flushed, a strange warmth spreading through her chest. She had never felt so seen, so acknowledged. And yet fear lingered. She had always hidden from the world, and stepping fully into this new reality felt as if she were standing at the edge of a cliff. Thrilled, but terrified of the fall. The days that followed brought tests, subtle but unrelenting. In the corridors, Lyra noticed that shadows seemed to linger longer near her, twisting unnaturally, sometimes forming shapes that disappeared the moment she blinked. Kale watched her carefully, his presence both shield and challenge. Every step, every glance, every word became a measure of trust and strength. One evening, Kale led her to the battlements where the wind was fierce and the cliffs fell away into clouds below. The moon hung low, casting silver light on the stone. Fenrir lay nearby, eyes glimmering in the night. "You have learned much in these few days," Kale said, voice low against the wind. "But the curse will test us further. Not in battle, not in skill, but in the choices we make and the trust we offer." Lyra looked out at the clouds below, her thoughts swirling. She had begun to understand her own power, the bond with the wolf, and the connection forming between her and Kale. Yet a part of her feared the cost, the sacrifices that might be demanded by the curse. By Kale or by her own choices. "Why me?" she whispered again, more to herself than to him. Kale stepped closer, the wind tugging at his cloak. "Because hiding has never been enough. You are meant for more than shadows, Lyra. And because, if I did not claim you, I would lose more than the curse, it would cost me my soul." Lyra's heart thumped in her chest. The words, so simple yet so heavy, stirred emotions she had never allowed herself to feel. She had been invisible all her life, yet here, in the northern fortress with the Alpha and his wolf, she felt seen, claimed, and important. The next test arrived without warning. In the early hours before dawn, a tremor shook the fortress. Shadows writhed across the walls, darker and more threatening than ever. Fenrir growled, hair bristling, and Kale drew his sword with practiced ease. Lyra, heart racing, felt the curse pulse within her chest, stronger than ever, urging her to act. From the shadows emerged creatures not entirely of flesh or spirit, whispering threats and voices like broken glass. The walls seemed to close in as they advanced, and the wind carried an otherworldly chill. Lyra knew instinctively what she had to do. She raised her hands, focusing on the surge of power within her. The shadows recoiled at her will, twisting back into themselves, forming a protective barrier around Kyle and Fenrir. Kyle's eyes widened, not in surprise but in recognition. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said, voice tight with awe. "The curse responds to your courage. You do not hide anymore. You fight. You are alive." Lyra's breath came in sharp bursts. I didn't know I could." Kale stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Now you do, and you will need this strength. The curse is far from over. It will test us in ways we cannot yet see." The creatures vanished into the mist as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving only the echo of whispered warnings. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated. She had faced the first true trial within the stronghold and survived. Kale knelt beside her, his dark eyes searching hers. "Do you understand now?" he asked softly. "The curse is not just magic. It is a test of spirit, heart, and trust. And you, Lyra, are no longer invisible. You are necessary, powerful, and bound to this fate in ways you cannot yet comprehend." Lyra nodded, still trembling, but a strange pride filled her. For the first time, she did not feel like a shadow in the halls of a world that ignored her. She was seen. She was claimed. And the bond with Kyle and Fenrir was no longer just a whisper of destiny, but a force she could feel pulsing through her. As dawn broke, casting a pale light over the fortress and the cliffs beyond, Lyra realized something profound. She had survived the first trial. She had stepped into the light, claimed by power, by the Alpha, and by her own courage. And yet somewhere deep in the stone walls, In the mist of the northern forests, the curse whispered that the true tests had only just begun. The wind carried the sound of distant shadows and an ancient voice, hinting that even in victory the journey would demand more, and Lyra knew with a certainty she had never felt before that she could no longer turn back. The northern wilderness stretched endlessly beyond the fortress, a tangled expanse of ice-laden trees, jagged rocks, and mist that curled like living spirits. Lyra rode beside Cale, Fenrir pacing silently at their side. The wind bit at their cheeks, carrying a scent of frost and something older, an energy that seemed to pulse through the very earth. Every step into this frozen expanse felt like a step deeper into the heart of the curse. Lyra had learned much in the fortress, yet she knew the trials ahead would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. Her power, once dormant and hidden, now surged within her chest like a living thing, unpredictable and demanding. She had survived shadows and whispers, but the wilderness felt alive in a way that was both beautiful and dangerous. Kyle rode with quiet intensity, his eyes scanning every shadow, every movement. He seemed attuned to the land, to the danger that slithered beneath the snow and mist. Fenrir's ears twitched constantly, tail low but alert, a silent warning that nothing in this place was as it seemed. "You feel it too, don't you?" Cale asked, voice low, almost carried away by the wind. "The curse is stronger here. It feeds on fear, doubt, and hesitation." Lyra nodded, gripping the reins tighter. "I feel it," she whispered. "It's alive. Like it knows me." Kyle's gaze softened, though the intensity never left his eyes. "It does. And it will test not just your strength but your heart. The shadows you face here are reflections of your own fears, of the parts of yourself you have hidden. You must confront them, or they will consume you." Lyra's pulse quickened. She had faced fear before, but this was different. This was not a momentary danger. It was a trial meant to strip her bare, to reveal what lay beneath her quiet exterior. And yet, for the first time, she did not feel powerless. The bond she shared with Cale and with Fenrir gave her courage she had never known. As they rode deeper into the wilderness, the mist thickened, and the world around them grew dim. The trees twisted into impossible shapes, their branches reaching like hands, blocking the pale light of the moon. Shadows moved independently of the wind, flickering at the edges of her vision. Lyra felt the curse pulse stronger with every step, whispering promises and threats alike. Suddenly, Fenrir growled, low and warning, ears pinned forward. Lyra tensed, heart pounding. From the mist emerged figures, tall and wraith-like, their forms shifting with every glance. Their eyes glowed faintly, and they moved silently, yet every instinct screamed danger. Lyra's hands tingled as her power stirred, a shield forming around her instinctively. Cale dismounted, sword drawn, stance steady and commanding. "Do not falter," he said, voice firm. "The curse feeds on fear. You control it, or it controls you." Lyra took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She reached out with the power that had awakened within her, letting it flow like water, steady and strong. The shadows recoiled at her will, hissing as they struck invisible barriers she formed instinctively. She felt the bond with Fenrir strengthen, a silent connection that guided her hands and her heart. The wraiths attacked, moving with unnatural speed, yet they could not breach her control. Cale moved alongside her, blade flashing, cutting through the nearest shadows with precise strikes. Fenrir leapt into the fray, teeth bared, forcing back the darkness with agility and strength. Lyra felt the energy surge through her chest, her confidence growing. She raised her voice, commanding the shadows to disperse. Slowly, painfully, they obeyed, retreating into the mist with whispers of warning. The forest fell silent once more, except for the ragged breathing of the three who had faced the trial together. Cale's eyes softened as he looked at her. "You are stronger than you know," he said, voice low but full of awe. "The curse recognizes courage. It respects those who do not hide." Lyra's legs trembled, exhaustion and exhilaration mingling in her chest. She had faced fear, faced the curse and survived. And yet, as she looked into Cale's storm-dark eyes, she realized the journey was far from over. There were shadows still waiting, trials she could not yet see, and truths that would demand everything she had. They continued through the forest, each step heavier than the last. The path became treacherous, icy rivers cutting across their way, ancient trees leaning as if to block their passage. Lyra felt her connection to the power within her grow stronger, more intuitive. She was learning to command it, to shape it, and to trust it. And with every moment her bond with Cale deepened, not just through danger but through understanding. At last, they reached a frozen clearing, the moonlight reflecting off the ice in pale silver. The air was thick with magic and the curse pulsed stronger than ever. Fenrir growled, ears forward, tail stiff. Lyra's fingers tingled as the shadows of the curse began to form around them, twisting into shapes both familiar and frightening. They are not just creatures, Cale said quietly, voice low and warning. They are reflections of our fears, our regrets, and the choices we have made. Face them, or they will claim you. Lyra took a deep breath. She saw figures emerge from the shadows, herself smaller, frightened, invisible. Cale hardened, burdened by guilt, and Fenrir, watching helplessly. Her heart ached at the sight, yet she knew what she had to do. Not anymore, she whispered. I am not invisible. I am not afraid. Power surged through her chest like a storm breaking free. The shadow figures paused, recoiling at her voice, at the command in her heart. She stepped forward, feeling the strength of her own courage, the bond with Cale, and the loyalty of Fenrir. With each word, each motion, the shadows dissipated, twisting back into mist. Cale's eyes widened, admiration and something softer mingling in his gaze. You are remarkable, he said, voice catching slightly. The curse bends to those who claim their own power. You have done more than survive. You have mastered your fear. Lyra's legs shook, but pride and exhilaration warmed her chest. She had faced the curse in its purest form, confronting not just external shadows but her own doubts. For the first time, she felt fully alive, fully herself. Cale reached out, taking her hand gently. We are bound, Lyra, he said softly, not just by the curse but by choice. We fight together, we trust each other, and together we will survive whatever comes next. Lyra looked into his eyes, seeing the storm of power and vulnerability within him. She nodded, her heart steady despite the cold. I trust you, she said. And she meant it, not blindly but fully, with every part of her that had ever hidden now awake and claiming its place. Fenrir nudged her gently, tail wagging slightly, a silent acknowledgement of her courage and her bond. The wolf's presence was a reminder that she was part of a triad, of a force older and stronger than she had ever known. As dawn approached, pale light spilling over the frozen trees, Lyra realized the journey was far from over. The curse had tested her, but it would test them both again. And yet, standing beside Cale and Fenrir, she no longer felt invisible, alone, or afraid. She was seen, she was claimed, and she was powerful. The forest whispered around them, secrets hidden in frost and mist, promising trials yet to come. And Lyra knew that whatever darkness awaited, she would face it, not as a shadow but as herself, bound to the Alpha, to the wolf, and to a destiny she had never imagined. The wind carried a faint whisper, distant and ancient, hinting that the curse was not finished, that greater shadows still awaited. And Lyra, hand in hand with Cale, knew she would face them, not as invisible but as seen, as powerful, and as unafraid. The northern cliffs were silent now, shrouded in a pale light that seemed neither dawn nor dusk but something in between. The forest below lay still as if holding its breath. Lyra stood beside Cale, her hand brushing Fenrir's fur, the wolf's eyes bright with awareness and loyalty. The curse had grown stronger over the days, testing them relentlessly, shaping them into something new. Now, it demanded its final reckoning. Cale's dark eyes met hers, storm clouds giving way to a calm resolve. This is it, he said quietly. The curse will give no quarter. Only by facing it together fully can we hope to end it. Lyra nodded, heart pounding, yet filled with a strange serenity. She had feared this moment, yet the courage she had discovered in the trials of the fortress and the forest guided her. She no longer felt invisible. She was claimed, seen, and ready. From the mist emerged a figure, larger than any shadow they had faced, its form constantly shifting. It carried the weight of centuries in its presence, a being older than the forest itself. Its eyes glowed with an unearthly light, and its voice when it spoke resonated like a distant storm. "You have come far," it said, echoing across the cliffs. "But the final trial is here. Only one of you may stand. Only one may claim the power. Choose wisely or all shall be lost." Lyra felt the power stir within her, stronger than ever. The curse pulsed like a living heart in her chest, urging her forward. Cale's hand found hers, grounding her, sharing his strength, his presence, his unwavering claim. Fenrir growled low, bristling, a silent sentinel ready to defend them both. "We face it together," Cale said, voice steady, unwavering. "No fear, no hesitation. Trust in yourself and in us." Lyra drew a deep breath, stepping forward. The wind whipped around them, and the shadows of the cliff twisted like living serpents. The final trial was not merely a test of strength or magic. It was a trial of heart, of trust, and of sacrifice. The shadow being advanced, voice a whisper and a roar at once. "Only by surrendering what you cherish most can the curse be broken." Lyra's chest tightened. Her instincts screamed that the trial would demand everything, her strength, her courage, even her bond with Cale. And yet she did not falter. She drew on the lessons of the forest, the fortress, and the shadows they had conquered together. She was no longer the girl who had hidden in the halls of Eldrath, unseen and quiet. She was visible, she was claimed, she was alive. Cale stepped beside her, sword drawn, but he did not advance. He did not need to. His presence alone was a shield, a promise, a tether to the courage that surged within her. Fenrir crouched, teeth bared, ready to strike, but Lyra felt that their bond alone could hold back the darkness. "You will not have me," Lyra whispered, raising her hands. The curse surged in response, shadows twisting and coiling around her, yet she did not flinch. She let the power within her flow, steady and strong, a river of light and strength that pushed against the ancient shadow. The being recoiled, hissing, twisting. "You resist." "But resistance alone is not enough," it intoned, its voice echoing like thunder. "Sacrifice, surrender. Give what you love most, or all is lost." Lyra looked at Cale. His storm-dark eyes met hers, filled with understanding, trust, and something deeper, something unspoken but undeniable. She realized then that the trial was not about losing, but about choosing together, about showing that their bond, their trust, and their courage were stronger than any shadow. "We do not surrender alone," Cale said, stepping closer. "We face it together as one. The curse does not command us. It tests us, and we choose each other." Lyra's heart surged at his words. She no longer feared the shadow, no longer questioned her power or her place in the world. She stepped fully into the light of her courage, letting the energy within her merge with Cale's presence, with Fenrir's loyalty, with the bond that had grown stronger with every trial. The shadow being shrieked, a sound that seemed to shake the cliffs and twist the forest below. Its form writhed, splintering into fragments that were pulled toward the rising light of their combined strength. Lyra felt the curse respond not with malice but with recognition. It had tested them, shaped them, and now it acknowledged their courage and unity. "Together," Lyra said, voice clear, steady, and full of power. "We are stronger." Cale's hand gripped hers firmly. "Together." The shadows exploded into mist, dissipating into the northern wind. The curse's presence vanished like a storm passing, leaving only the pale light of dawn spilling over the cliffs. Fenrir exhaled, tail wagging slightly as if approving the victory. Lyra's chest heaved, not from exhaustion alone but from exhilaration, triumph, and relief. Kyle lowered his sword, his gaze never leaving hers. "You have faced everything," he said softly. "The curse, the shadows, the fear within yourself, and you have emerged stronger, visible and unbroken." Lyra's lips curved into a small, unsteady smile. I didn't think I could," she admitted. "I always thought I was nothing, invisible." "You were never invisible," Cale interrupted gently. "You were unseen, overlooked, but you were always strong, always capable. And now everyone can see it. I can see it. Lyra's heart thumped, a mix of awe, relief, and a strange new warmth. She had faced herself, the curse, and the shadows of her past. And in doing so, she had discovered something greater: courage, trust, and a bond that no darkness could sever. Cale stepped closer, eyes holding hers in a storm of emotion. Lyra, you are no longer hidden. You never will be again, and neither of us needs to face the world alone. She felt the warmth of his presence, the steady strength of his hand in hers, the unwavering loyalty of Fenrir by her side. For the first time, she understood fully what it meant to be seen, to be claimed not as a prize but as a partner and equal, a force that could face even the darkest shadow and emerge victorious. The wind shifted, carrying away the last whispers of the curse. The forest below shimmered with pale light, as if acknowledging the bond they had forged and the trials they had endured. Lyra breathed deeply, feeling the power within her settle, balanced and calm. She had faced fear, she had embraced courage, and she had claimed her place in a world that had once ignored her. Kyle reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We have been tested, Lyra, but we survived, together, and we will continue to face whatever comes together. Lyra nodded, a tear of relief and triumph slipping down her cheek. Together, she repeated, voice steady. Fenrir nudged her hand and she laughed softly, the sound carrying across the cliffs, mingling with the light of dawn. It was a sound of freedom, of victory, of life fully embraced. They stood together on the northern cliffs, hand in hand, bonded by courage, love, and trust. The curse was gone, but the lessons it had taught them remained. Lessons of strength, of unity, of stepping into the light when the shadows seemed endless. And in that moment, Lyra understood the truth she had longed for all her life. Invisibility was never her fate. She had been waiting for recognition, for trust, for courage to awaken, and now, standing beside Cale with Fenrir at her side, she was seen, truly seen, and nothing could take that away. The northern wind carried their triumph into the mountains and forests beyond. Shadows had tested them, but they had emerged stronger, bound together by choice, trust, and courage. And for the first time, Lyra knew that she would never again hide in the shadows, for she had found her place, by the side of the Alpha, the wolf, and a destiny she could finally claim.